Hello! Let's talk about writing with skill. Hello, I am Rachel, a second-generation homeschooler living overseas and raising bilingual children, and I love to talk about homeschool curriculum on this channel. So today we are going to be talking about the curriculum called Writing with Skill. I'll be showing you an in-depth look inside these books because I feel like that's the best way to help you really understand how this works and whether this resource might be a good fit for you and for your child. Now, I did very recently make a video about how I teach writing in the middle school and high school level without using a structured writing curriculum. So I will link that in the cards above, but I am very aware that my approach and what works with me and my brain is not going to be a good fit for every person or every kid. So I want to be sharing with you this resource, which is a classical approach to expository writing for roughly 5th through 9th graders, but I'm also going to talk a little bit more about the appropriate level to use this at while we look at the curriculum. All right, so this is Writing with Skill. I'm going to be showing you the student workbook from level 1 today, as well as the student workbook and instructor textbook from level 3. There is an instructor text for each level, and it is required according to their website. Now you'll notice that we do not have the instructor textbook for the student workbook. I'm not saying that I don't recommend having it. I think it would be useful, and I'll show you what's in the student workbook. We're not exactly sure why that didn't end up getting purchased. I don't know if you've noticed, but sometimes you don't know exactly what you're buying. You don't know exactly what you need when you're first buying curriculum. So probably something like that happened. This is currently in use with my mom and my youngest sister, who is going into 6th grade. The general recommendation from the author of this writing program is that level 1, you would start it roughly at about 5th grade, and this moves through about 5th through 9th grade of expository writing curriculum. However, based on a lot of reviews and real life experience, if you have a child who's about to head into 5th grade, do not be at all alarmed if you look at this and think, that seems pretty heavy, a little too much. It would be pretty intense for the normal, probably average 5th grader. So what they actually recommend is whatever age your child is, if you're using this because they're struggling with composition, they don't have solid composition skills down for expository writing, they recommend starting with level 1. And I do want to say this is a pretty affordable writing curriculum for what it is compared to some of the other writing curriculums out there. I mean, this is a big book. The instructor's guide is a big book, especially when you can get one of the Well-Trained Minds 40% off sales within a year. You can get this for a pretty affordable price. The instructor's text is, of course, reusable. The student workbook is kind of technically consumable, but there's not a whole lot of writing that's supposed to be done in it. There is writing, but it's not like every page or constantly. So we have actually just rewritten things in notebooks, and for the most part, we have found ways to make it not consumable. And that is because we do tend to go the extra mile with not consuming our resources when possible, because we live overseas and it's hard to get them. So how I'm going to structure this video to tell you what you can expect with this is I'm going to show you the table of contents so you can see what it goes over. And then I am going to walk you through 1 week within the curriculum so that you can see what all is going on within 1 week. And I'm not picking a week at the very beginning, just because the very beginning just starts with a whole lot of learning how to write an outline, and I don't feel like it's totally representative of what you can expect throughout all of it. This is your reminder to subscribe, because if you are watching this video, it's time to be honest with yourself. You are watching an incredibly nerdy homeschool curriculum video. This is the kind of thing you spend time watching on YouTube, so just go ahead and subscribe, because this is the kind of video I make on YouTube. So, you're supposed to be starting with Writing with Skill 1. Typically with any child, when you're starting they don't know how to compose a paper well, and we need to learn how to do that. this is what is covered. So we're starting with basic skills, which in this classical approach to writing education, there's a lot of focus on reading, writing, learning how to, and basically learning from the patterns within the writing that you read, learning how to outline what you read, see the pattern within that piece of writing that you read, and basically learning how to understand what other people read so that you can imitate those patterns, learn how to use solid patterns of composition within your own writing. So the first couple weeks are all just like kind of basic background. Then we start moving into building blocks for composition. What we're really doing here is we are gradually learning different types of compositions. So what are we doing here? We're learning a chronological narrative of a past event. We then move on to week 5 is a chronological narrative of a scientific discovery. Chronological narrative of a past event again, then scientific discovery. So we're kind of alternating between history and science writing right here, right? This is expository writing, so it's writing in science and history for this section of it, and we're clearly focusing on chronological narratives. And we spend a good long time working on the chronological narratives. Then we're working on a different type of writing. We're doing descriptions now, descriptions of places. Work on that for several weeks. Then, now we're combining 2 different forms within writing, chronological narrative and description within the same piece of writing. Scientific descriptions. So we keep on working. Okay, now we're getting into sentence skills. In this part, we start describing people. We learn metaphors as connected to character descriptions, biographical sketches. So what you're recognizing in here is it's tackling different forms within academic writing, within expository, factual writing. This is not a creative writing curriculum. Okay, now we're into some literary criticism, writing about literature. This is not book reports, y'all. We're writing about literature. Then we start getting towards research by the end of the level 1. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to read what's here. And then we do our literary criticism of poetry. And we end the year with a final project which includes research. So it's our overarching look at what you go through within 1 year. You can see that the year is divided up into weeks, and they divided straight up into day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. These are not going to be super, super fast, spending 10 minutes a day on your writing curriculum. No, do not expect that. The goal of this writing curriculum is to produce kids who deeply understand writing. There's not a lot of reading as in you're reading super long texts. You're not. You're reading very short texts, but there is reading. There's reading for depth of understanding, and then there's a lot of work with what you're reading and analysis. And so it's not something that's going to be, this is going to be a 5 or 10 minute little, workbook that we add to our day. This is something that you use when you really want structured writing instruction, when you want to take a child to go from not being able to put a summary together, not being able to put proper argumentation together to argue a point, to being able to do expository writing, being able to follow a reasonable format, a reasonable argument flow that other people will understand. So I do want to take you through 1 week of this curriculum because I think that's what's going to be really helpful for helping you to fully understand how this works. Because I know that this can be a pretty intimidating curriculum, and I want you to, I want this video to be actually useful. So we're going to go through 1 week, and you can kind of expect similar patterns to follow through every week, although they are doing different topics and different exercises in different weeks. So week 8 is description of a place. This is day 1. So step 1, we're reading. We're reading from George MacDonald's modern fairy tale, The Princess and the Goblin. So we're reading a short selection, a little bit over a page. Then we have step 2. We are noting central details from this page. Now, if you had the teacher guide, what the teacher's guide has is it repeats everything that's written for your student so that you know what your student is supposed to be reading in the book. But then it will also kind of have some example answers. So in your step 2 section, you would have the example answers of these would be examples of central details within that. Then we're going to be writing summary sentences by combining the phrases of the central details from this piece. Now, this is obviously week 8, so this is not what you're starting with. There is previous guidance in picking out important details. There's previous practice with picking out important details, previous practice with this. So this is not completely new information at this point to the child, but that is day 1. You read, you identify central details, not details that don't really matter. And they give examples that are specific to this passage. Then it's writing some summary sentences, 3 or 4 sentences. And then you have your instructor, the parent, check those sentences. And the parent guide would have example sentences of what you would expect your student sentences to look like in response to this. Then day 2, outlining exercise. Here you are reading a different excerpt. This is on the same topic of describing a place, because that's what we're doing throughout this whole week. We're working on that. Here we are making an outline of this short passage. This was an even shorter passage, you can see here. Now here we're making an outline. This is still day 2, and they walk you through it. They have a question, they give you something to do. Did you come up with an answer? Then we're moving on, and it kind of, in this part of the step, it gives you some help with coming up with the answers. Then day 3, we're analyzing and practicing the topos. The topos is the basically pattern. Children are learning different patterns of writing, patterns of argumentation, or maybe formula is a better word. The formula for this type of writing, describing a place. On this day 3, we are understanding the purpose of descriptions. I actually really liked this focus on it, the understanding the purpose of descriptions, because it talks about if you have no purpose, you know, the purpose of your description changes the words that you're going to use. Descriptions are not just dryly written facts. If you have a purpose in your description, that's going to change the words that you use. And they go through that on this day. So then at the end of this day, we have practicing with that strategy. They give you this short paragraph, and the child has to write. The first time, they're describing this room, imagining it's part of a ghost story. The second time, they describe this room again, but they're imagining that this description is part of the end of a romance where the hero and heroine have fallen in love and are getting married. So the child gets to experience how the purpose within your writing and the story within your writing affects the way you describe the same thing, and you change your words. Of course, this is getting into the program. This is week 8 into the program, so that's not the very first time they're introduced to a topic like that. Then day 4 of the week, we're continuing to analyze and practice the topos. Here they have a focus on learning space and distance words and phrases. Learning how that when writers use these key words that are describing where things are in relation to something else, it helps you to be able to accurately picture what they are describing. Then here we're learning about adding to the pattern of the topos. We're having instructors check our work. This is how they kind of write these topos things. What is a description of a place? That is what we're doing. What we're doing in this week. We have a definition, a visual description of a physical place. What's the procedure? We need to be able to ask what's our purpose. And then one detail to remember within this topos is make use of space and distance words. So this is a summary of what we are learning, and these summaries are written into their composition notebook so that they're making a collection of different formulas for writing, and they write these into their notebook. So their collection grows as they go through each week of the program. And then here we are practicing, and we're practicing with this very famous castle we are describing. this scene here. And they give specific things that they want to see included in the description. Now, okay, that's our 1 week. You know, we got our 4 days, our 1 week. Some things I want to point out. This is written directly to the student. So in theory, a lot of this could be done very independently. I would say it's really going to depend on the student whether in reality they can do this largely independently or whether they need a lot of assistance. The readings are not, I would not say they're the easiest readings. So if you have a kid who struggles with following instructions that they read, if you have a kid who struggles with reading comprehension, this would be a very difficult curriculum to be done independently. Our current almost 6th grader does struggle with reading comprehension, and she's grown a lot with being able to follow instructions that she reads, but she's not there yet. So this is something that my mom will read with her, and we'll do this together with her. If you had an older student or a student who was very confident at being able to read instructions and follow it, this could be a largely independent subject right here. And then you just as an instructor are coming in to check their outlines that they're making, or to check their summary sentences, check their writing, seeing that they are actually applying the tools and the skills that they are meant to apply, seeing whether they are actually pulling out the correct key details. And your instructor text is what gives you the information for that, so that you don't actually have to be fully reading it and reading the different reading passages and figuring out what are the key details, how should I outline this, so that you don't have to make it up yourself. Now, we don't have the instructor's guide for this level, so but you know, this is meant for roughly 5th, 6th-ish grade levels, so my mom's like, hey, I can do that myself, no problem. For a homeschool mom who's been at this almost 30 years, it's pretty doable, but I'm here saying I'm not recommending doing this without the instructor's guide. And now I'll try to quickly take you through a week of level 3, just so that you can see where you're heading with this program and kind of how it ups the challenge over time. You do start out this year with reviewing narrative summaries and 3-level outlines, these basics that have been taught in previous levels. The summary skills and the outline skills are super important within this method of teaching writing. I don't think anyone gets super excited about outlines, but they are considered an essential tool within this approach to teaching writing, so your student is going to be practicing that skill again and again. Then we're kind of doing alternating between scientific writing, historical writing, and literary-based writing, like literary criticism. So you're going to see different types of writing within this level as well. We're doing literature, writing about fiction. We start doing some scientific writing, writing in experimental sequence here. This is the week we're actually going to be looking at, which is learning this pattern: explanation by cause and effect in history. Learning to write this type of paper. And I'll take you through how much happens in 1 week of that. We have some weeks on poetry. Get to do a movie review. Let's see what else we have. Place description at this level. Analysis. Comparing fiction and poetry, so comparative analysis. So you'll see there's a lot of different topics within writing, different types of expository writing covered in. So in this book, I'm going to show you week 12, Introduction to the Explanation by Cause and Effect in History. So this is a form of expository writing within history. It's the cause and effect essay. So here is the teacher's guide. You can tell where it includes all your student instructions right on your page, so that you know what the student is supposed to be reading throughout, but then it will also include more than just what the student's supposed to read, because you're going to have some answers in here. It always has these sections throughout the student guide: how to help with the student with step whatever the step is. So let's look at what we do on one day. So first, we're reviewing all the different topoi in history. That's the plural of topos. So this is going to look like a lot, but it should be all complete review for the student at this point. This is what a biographical sketch is. This is a sequence within history. This is a temporal comparison within history. This is explanation by definition of one of these things. And that has quite a lot in it. Then we have narrative by significance of a past event. So this is all review. This is all of the patterns that they already know, and now they're going to be learning a new pattern of expository writing within history. So now they get to read, and you can tell that some of the reading passages are significantly longer once you're in this level 3. So this is 3 solid pages. Then, after reading it, it always tells you to, good. Now read it again from the beginning. This is repeated reading is a big part of learning to read carefully, learning to see all the pieces. So they're supposed to read that twice. Then the step 3 for day 1 is identify all of the forms. So this long reading includes elements from almost all of the topoi that they have learned. They need to go back through and for each paragraph identify what form, what formula or pattern is being used within each paragraph. Then here in your teacher's guide, this is when the teacher's guide is really nice. They are all labeled for you, so you have the answers. So you don't have to go read through that yourself and decide what the correct answer is. As the teacher, it's here in the teacher's guide. And there are notes and answers to questions about it, like reasons of why the different paragraphs are fitting into the different topoi. Then we go to day 2. So that was 1 day of writing instruction at this level. Day 2 is Introduction to Explanation by Cause and Effect, Part 1. Okay, so here we're introducing this. We're analyzing this new pattern that they're learning. And we begin by reading, not such a long passage, identifying the topic of each paragraph. So this is when you go and you outline for your reading. You outline it at the basic level, and then you do the 4-step outline. This is an example of where they have it, where the student would write in the notebook. But you can pretty clearly see here that they wouldn't have to write in the notebook. You could just write this out in a separate notebook. And then you're analyzing the paragraphs, analyzing your writing. And they have a lot for the student to read as part of the analysis process. They're asking questions. They're telling you, like, this is important. This is what's happening in this paragraph. So they're telling you a lot. Then at the end, more analysis tomorrow. So here we are writing down the pattern of this topos within our composition notebook. This formula for writing, we're writing down based on what we learned yesterday in day 2. Now we're reading another example of explanation by cause and effect in history. We read that, we outline it again, we analyze our outlines. Then in day 4, here we're learning some rules, and I really like this part of it. Like there's things that stand out to me about this program, and this is one of those. Here we're learning about the rules within cause and effect, which goes into talking about logical fallacies. A really important thing to talk about with our young writers is logical fallacies. It's great for them to be able to identify these in the media that they consume, and we also want them to avoid them in their writing because they can come up very commonly in the writing of young writers. So they describe what are several logical fallacies right here, and then we go into this step is identify the fallacy. And they give different short paragraphs, and the child is supposed to identify which of those fallacies they learned about is shown as a real example right here. So I think that is an excellent part of the lesson. That, like I said, there's some parts about this that are kind of dry and dragging to me. I've never been the biggest fan of so much outlining. I realize that it's helpful, but for me as just more of a natural writer that things make sense to, doing a lot of outlining is just not my favorite. But there's some really cool stuff in here. And I'm not denying the power of outlining for getting kids to really deeply understand and be able to see patterns within literature. But I am saying that for some kids, they don't need to do so much outlining to see the patterns. The patterns jump out at them. So that's why I do say, always with curriculum, know your child and know yourself. For me, patterns jump out at me when I read. For many kids, patterns do not jump out, and you need these tools and these skills for the patterns to become visible. And then we go to week 13. So you can tell we are not within 1 week writing already a full expository essay on analyzing a cause and effect event within history. So that's just something to be aware of. I hope that this was helpful. If you have any more questions about writing with skill, go ahead and leave them in the comments below, and I will be happy to answer them. I will see you next time. Bye!